Welcome back to Have You Wireless, part of the Packet Pushers Podcast Network. I'm here with Ben Toner today talking about an app to help you run your WLAN-Pi. And it's called WLAN-Pi App. Ben, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Keith. How are you?
Well, let's just jump right into this WLAN-Pi app. What, where, why, how, how did this get started?
Hi, Keith. As part of the WLAN-Pi project, the team and the community that developed this have always been striving to make things better. And I know that you recently covered the launch of our WLAN-Pi Go, which is a brand new modality for the WLAN-Pi with no screen or interface or buttons, and therefore really forced the topic of how are we going to control this thing, and therefore needed something like an app to be able to control it. And we didn't want to do an app just for one of the WLAN-Pis, so we built an app for all of them, and that's how it came about.
Well, if we go back over a year ago at the WLAN-Pi deep dive at WLPC in Prague, you offered APIs. And I'm assuming that's how this whole thing started.
That's right. I think we already knew we needed to go down an API route. I think there was already rumblings of a headless device in amongst the team. I think very much an idea of there's lots of different systems within the WLAN-Pi that were doing the same job on top of each other. So the original WLAN-Pi has a screen which uses a system called FPMS, front panel module system, for showing the display. And it would do things like test the interfaces and do ping tests and whatever. And then there was the web UI, where you could go in via the web UI and you could do the same things. And you could say, oh, what's the ping test and whatever. And they were all doing these tasks independently. So more than a year ago, we said, you know what, this should be centralized. This should be API managed, and then all these things like the menu system and the UI and a user building an app or anything they want to do could all come into this central core and use the APIs to get the right information they want and control the system in the way they want.
So you came up with the app, and how does the app connect to the WLAN-Pis? First of all, you can run it on iOS or Android or Mac OS, and when it comes up, it finds all my WLAN-Pis around me. How's it doing that?
There's always been actually in the WLAN-Pi MDNS announcements, right? And so I think for those listening who are familiar in Linux, we use Avahi, which is a module for announcing MDNS. And we decided that we could actually get a little bit smarter, and we could announce additional information within that. So not only is there an MDNS announcement with our host name, but it also says, oh, hey, I'm a WLAN-Pi M4 or a WLAN-Pi Go, and this is my OS version. So these things are now in the announcements. So when you plug a WLAN-Pi into a network, whether that's a WLAN-Pi Go in via USB-C, which is a virtual network effectively, or you plug it into your own network, as long as MDNS is enabled, you start to see these WLAN-Pis turn up, and there they are, and you'll see them, and they'll have their information. This is a Go, this is M4, this is its host name, this is its software, and then you can just connect, because that resolves down to an IP address, and off we go. We can make a connection.
So you use the app, you get on, you connect to a WLAN-Pi. What can you do from inside the app?
So the app started out with a very simple brief, which was just to give anybody trying to use it similar functionality to they might have seen from that front panel screen with a little joystick and so on. So big kudos to the team who built that, and I think it's all evolved, and the screen and the joysticks become really nice. But when you're not standing by it, whether this is remote, so we've talked about things like the M4 being a leave behind, you might leave it in someone's office, or the Go, you need to be able to use those familiar functions. So the first thing it does is replicate some of that. So there's effectively a control panel section. So you can connect, you can see that you're connected, you can see the OS version, And then I should say, actually, with the WLAN-Pi Go, you can update it if there's an update available. And then you can go to the control panel and see some of the things that you would be expected to see, like what network interfaces are available and what's the reachability look like, and some of the interesting things like what's the CPU like and what's the memory like and what's the disk space like. So you can see all of those things. And then more recently, WLAN-Pi introduced the ability to launch services like Grafana and Kismet and so on. So they're all there as well. You can start a Kismet service and view it through the app. So these are the things that were in the first versions, and kind of brought it onto a par with what you could do on the screen.
So the app kind of replaces the FPMS for even if you're not remote. I've got one sitting next to me, and I can go back and forth between the two. They're not 100. You can't do 100% of each thing on either side. Let's move on to what are the new features in WLAN-Pi? Historically, every WLPC one in Phoenix in February, you come out with a new updated rev, and same in October for Prague. But this Prague was focused on the Go, but you kind of came out with a new version for the non-Goes as well. What are the new things in the WLAN-Pi app, the WLAN-Pi OS?
Yeah, and so I think it's a great opportunity to talk about the M4 and the M4 Plus, given the whole sort of noise around the Go. Let's not forget about the originals because they're so valuable. But the big changes in the OS are around being able to actually manage the adapters. So the APIs that were developed at the beginning to be able to do everything FPMS does were extended to allow us to now manage the adapters and the network interfaces more. So in fact, you yourself, Keith, came to the community and said, well, you know what, there's this great new app out there called Orb, and it'll sit on your WLAN-Pi and it will run and do tests. But actually, you know, I need it to be easier to operate my WLAN-Pi, so it auto boots and connects to a Wi-Fi network for Orb to test. So we've introduced new capability in this latest Rev 3.4 to actually allow you to define a configuration for all your network adapters, deploy that configuration, and that configuration gets rerun every boot. And that configuration is API managed, so that works really easily.
For those of you who've done this before, we used to have to go in and literally edit a comp file and make edit changes to what SSID, what PSK, etc. And so you've now automated that. How does that interface work? How do you get a WLAN-Pi to join as a Wi-Fi client?
So ultimately, at the lowest level, we're automating that, what you just said, the editing of those files. So those conf files are created by the application now in real time. And that's the application running on the WLAN-Pi. Two major steps were made to help with that automation and how that automation needed to work. The first was we quickly realized that it's difficult for apps to be bound to a particular interface. So if you had multiple interfaces, multiple adapters connected to your WLAN-Pi, and you wanted to use one for monitoring and one for connection, it was very hard to actually run an app and say, that's going over this connected adapter to Wi-Fi. In fact, it was even slightly worse with something like the M4, which is PoE powered, because it would often be connected to a network, and applications would see that the default interface was Ethernet and start testing that. So if you installed Orb on WLAN-Pi and ran it, you were really testing the Ethernet interface. So we needed a way.
And there's a good use case for putting a WLAN-Pi using its Ethernet port to report in its status. So that's useful. But from the Wi-Fi standpoint, I want to know what's going on in the Wi-Fi world.
Right, and you couldn't. That's where the complexity, I think, editing WPA supplicant config files was a step that most people have done somewhere along the line. It's not unfamiliar. It's not that hard to follow. And there are pre-canned network blocks that you can paste in, change a few things. It's quite easy. And the WLAN-Pi documentation actually told you how to do it. Getting a particular adapter on an interface and asking an application like Orb to run against that adapter was the sticking point. So we needed a way to segment that network up. You couldn't bind it, and you could build lots of complicated routes, but this is the kind of thing that gets really complicated very quickly and actually lends itself to getting in a muddle and hard to recover from, because there's multiple things trying to write routing tables and so on, and it gets messy. So after a little bit of research, we realized that we could do something called network namespaces, where effectively slicing your WLAN-Pi up into virtual networks, and you take the adapters that are all sitting in one bundle, and you can put them in the virtual networks, and then you can ask an application to run inside that virtual network, and it only find the adapter you've put there, and it'll use it. So for argument's sake, if you have an M4 with its built-in Wi-Fi adapter, and you have plugged in a USB Wi-Fi adapter, and you have an Ethernet interface, that's 3 of them. We could split that up across 2 different virtual networks. We could move a Wi-Fi adapter into a brand new virtual network, and we could run Orb in there, and it'll only see that Wi-Fi adapter connected to whatever Wi-Fi you want, and it will test it. Back in the normal, what we call the root namespace, where everything previously existed, that'll all just carry on operating as it was before, and you can connect Wi-Fi Explorer, you can test the Ethernet, you can do all these different things. So that was where we wanted to get to. So we built the system to be able to do that.
And how do you access those namespaces?
So the sort of slightly complicated bit is that we built this brand new configuration construct. It's a JSON file. It's documented, and we are writing more documentation around that as we speak. It's all kind of quite new still. And this documentation says, okay, here's a namespace that I want, here's an adapter I want in it, and here's an application I want in it. And in fact, you can actually define whether the adapter should be in managed mode or monitor mode. And if it's in managed mode, what it should be connecting to, WPA2, WPA3, open networks, and so on. So there's this JSON file where you say, okay, in the root, I'm going to leave this adapter. I'm going to create a new namespace. I'm going to call it my Orb namespace, for instance, and I move another adapter in there, and I'm going to run Orb in there. And this JSON file defines that. And within the WLAN-Pi app, we created a new management page that graphically helps create those files for you. So you don't, for the end user, they don't really need to understand what's under the hood there. They just need to click a few buttons, take an adapter and say, yeah, I want to use this with Orb, and I want it isolated. Let's go.
Well, thanks. By the way, I've used it and played with it and love it. Thank you. And to the whole team for putting that together. One other thing that can be useful, you talked about M4s and their leave behinds. You can also take a R4, and if you use a adapter that's kind of a PoE adapter that splits the PoE out, turns it into a USB-C, so you can run an M4 in that same mode. An R4. We now have this ability to have leave behinds, and with Tailscale, you can have access to these anywhere in the world. And so using the new tool you mentioned with namespace, I could Tailscale into a WLAN-Pi that I've given one of my customers, log into it, choose a new SSID to test, have it join that SSID and report to me via the Ethernet port. At the same time, I can have Wi-Fi Explorer listening in the air, and the third one, I can be using a Wi-Fi adapter as a client, all at the same time. That's kind of the holy grail we've been looking for quite a while.
Yeah, that I think that does elevate the utility of the M4 and the M4 Plus and the R4 to that next level. It's like once it's deployed, being able to get in and just move these things around, and you can remotely go in and install any application you want. It could be Kismet, it could be anything else, and you can run all these things and just uh, let them all test different aspects of the network. And you can also test multiple SSIDs, right? So you can say, I want 2 adapters being tested.
We in the industry love the WLAN-Pis. It's a nice tool that lets us, do the things we need to do. It has been very Linux oriented. Then I moved on to the front panel system, and now we have an app that sits in front of it that helps it even more. What's in the future?
That's a great question. So I think the immediate future, what we're trying to do is increase the API. I think the API has been developed and has really only been used by the small community, the core community of developers. And that's a good thing because in these early days, we need to test it. There has certainly been plenty of bugs and plenty of gremlins that we had to find, and we're still probably finding a few. But we're on the long tail of that, I think. And so it's about time that we now introduce the APIs to more people. And so actually, very timely story in Prague, whilst giving a deep dive on the WLAN-Pi Go, at least 2 people came to us and said, can we have the documentation for these APIs? We want to start building things. So we've been able to provide these APIs and documentation to people. And we know of one community in Germany that the person intends on taking this into like a hackathon style community. So you can imagine plugging WLAN-Pis in and letting people access them remotely via APIs and building new apps. The other thing is we do see that there is quite a large demand for accessing some of the monitor mode scanning, so some of the beacons and the packets and all that kind of stuff. And we've got some great tools out there that will do that. You can use Wireshark directly. You can use all sorts of different tools. Adrian's tools will do it, and there's other tools like Hammer who will actually use a WLAN-Pi and take the beacons and use them as part of their scanning as well. And what we're seeing is conflicts about appearing. So if you've installed one person's little service to help them use it, it stops somebody else's from working and so on. So what's next is to bring all of these third parties up to a level that use the API. And we're now extending the API to build in a streaming WebSocket API. And what that means is you will be able to ask for something on the stream, like give me beacons or give me scans or give me spectrum. And this information will just come out and it'll just be available. And then anybody who wants to subscribe and listen to it, or any app who wants to subscribe and listen to it, will be able to.
Well, love having the new WLAN-Pi app along with the WLAN-Pi Go, and had some great fun doing a bunch of labs using those at WLPC. If someone wanted to track down you personally and the WLAN-Pi team, where would they find you?
So I am Ben at numerousnetworks.co.uk. The WLAN-Pi team is much broader. There's a core community that consists of Jerry Ola, Nick Turner, Jerry Brecker, Josh Schmedel, and a few and Adrian Granados. And we can be found via WLANPi.com. We have a form at the bottom where we just ask people to subscribe, and we send out a newsletter probably twice a year. But you can contact us there. We actually even have one of those little chatbot agents where you can send us a note and we'll get back to you. And in the community, we all just monitor these. We also, for anyone who wants to get any more involved, if you like the idea of these APIs, you want to get involved in using them, building your own app, we have a Slack channel. So the WLAN-Pi Slack channel. So contact us via one of our channels through the website, ask to be introduced to the Slack channel, we'll bring you in, and then there's a whole world of chat. And you can sit back and observe the pain we go through when we're rushing towards a new release pre-WLPC.
Well, this has been another episode of the Heavy Wireless Podcast. This is part of the Packet Pushers Podcast Network. My name is Keith Parsons. And if you have any other ideas you'd like to hear on a future episode, please leave messages in the notes. Thank you.